Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. I am Brian Altunian, co-host, sitting with my good friend, my partner to thrive, Mr. Sean Francis. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Today's a different day with a different kind of vibe. There's some days where there's just something different about the day, the way the proceedings play out and everything. And today is no different, especially because of our format. Today, it really is just two dads. Our only guests are those that tune in. We're going to have a conversation, and that's simple and straightforward.
Yeah, I think that's the. Oh, there we go. Hey, Joe. Just two dads and my daughter, and and those of you listening. So first of all, welcome everybody. We do this on a weekly basis. Sean and I have been doing this podcast now since last August, and started out several years ago providing services to the special needs community. Hello, Robert, one of our closest and dearest friends to our show. Great to see you as always. Sean and I started to have conversations around the special needs community, partially because both of us have children who have been through and continue to go through special needs support, special needs as part of the special needs community. And we were having such great conversations that, as dads of special needs children, you can share certain things with one another that I think gentlemen may not be so want to do. And as we were having conversations, we said, these conversations, if somebody else heard this or was recording us, might actually make a difference in somebody else's life. So we decided, let's do a podcast. Let's share the stuff that we talk about as fathers of children with special needs. And then let's highlight, as we kept encountering phenomenal people who are making a difference in the world of special needs families. And let's provide a platform where folks could come on and talk about the work that they do, help the special needs community. Because once you have a special needs, once you're servicing the special needs community, the reality is the help can go, it transcends, it goes beyond that. So our platform has generally been since really not quite a year, but almost a year. Every week, Sean and I do this, and it's expanded considerably. We're now on podcast outlets all over: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio. You can hear us on almost everywhere where people listen to podcasts. Pretty soon we're going to have a television channel. We're actually going to be part of a broadcast channel. News of that to come in the coming weeks or months. And thanks to friends like Robert Moorhead and folks down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Sean is from, we actually do a show once a week as well on WSTX AM radio down in the Virgin Islands. So we want to welcome everybody who's listening, everybody who's watching. People are participating. Hello, Noreen. Hello, Susanna. And so great to see all of you. Today is a special, I don't know why we went down this path, but about a week or so ago, Sean and I don't know, right? I don't know how, today's going to be different, but today's literally going to be just two dads chatting about things that are near and dear to our hearts. And again, I don't know if it's something in the air or if it's, astrology or what's going on, but vulnerability is in the air, and we are not afraid of things like vulnerability. So if you are a man and you don't like to listen to things that could make you feel uncomfortable or vulnerable, this will be a tough one for you to sit through. Get out. So, but we're going to have fun. I don't know if we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun. But listen, we wear our hearts on our sleeves. There are things that are very important to us and very near and dear to our hearts and our missions. And one of the reasons that Sean and I get along so well, and the reason why we do this, is because our hearts are aligned in service to other people, to each other, and to our families. And so from that perspective, I think it's going to be a meaningful and valuable show. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for commenting. We're going to respond as much as we can. Sean Hall, our producer out in, I don't know if you see me on camera or not, but I just pointed to Hawaii. From where I sit in Los Angeles, I just pointed to Hawaii, where Sean Hall is. So but before we get going, I don't know where it is. Anyways, Sean Francis, my dear friend, my partner in Thrive. How's it going? Let you kick things off.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. As I always say, I continue to be reminded that our biggest nightmares are other people's dreams. And so life brings you struggles and challenges, but they also present opportunities. And so you and I had a conversation this past week about we like to have guests on here so we can uplift them, shine a light on the services that they provide for the special needs community. But today we're going to talk about just what it means to be a dad, number one, and then what does it mean to be a dad to a child that has special needs? What, if any, difference is there? There's several things that take place. There's a bunch of bullet points and subtopics underneath that. In many cases, there are fathers, mothers as well, that when a child is diagnosed with special needs, depending on the severity, not only does the marriage not last, but one of the two parents may just very well simply depart, and I mean literally like run. So what does it take to be a dad? What does it take to be a dad under the various circumstances that occur as a parent to a child with special needs? I think to begin with, the first thing we'll acknowledge is that as much as for me growing up, there are a lot of things that I wanted in life. I wanted to have a number one songs on the chart, and be a great hit maker as both a songwriter and as an artist. So like many other people out there, I got a lot of demos lying around and stuff like that. Being in films was not a bad idea, but I had more ideas about writing than anything there. And right up there with it, and of course on a grander scale, was being a husband and being a father and being a business owner, since I come from a line of them. And as much as I would see and envision things, there's nothing like actually living that. And so when that takes place, that you find that your value is so important because it depends on somebody else's survival and all those great things. The day that Elijah was born, I actually, I cut the cord and everything. My wife delivered by C-section. And what's funny is when they actually took him out, I didn't actually record it at that moment. He had just come out, because as I was standing there, I was just like, they're like, Mr. Francis, we're about to take him out. I was like, okay. And I have the camcorder around my neck. It's not a phone. This is 2005. Phones recorded then, but it wasn't as sharp as it is now. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I mean, like big time geek mode. Oh my God, over and over again. And I'm like, oh, it's not on. So I finally cut the cord and everything. And if you look at pictures that we took, with me walking down the hallway, Laura wheeled back to her room, there's a look on my face for those that are looking on Facebook Live, and we'll see on our YouTube. My facial expression was just like in every picture, because I was just like, I never felt so weak and yet so strong at the same time. And
That's the truth.
Yeah. And
right. So sort of a feeling of both helplessness and like
empowerment.
All of a sudden, like you're like, hey, I'm now responsible for more than just myself and my,
completely.
My wife,
you're like a grain of sand, and at the same time, that grain of sand has the biggest meaning in the universe, and all those things. So when the diagnosis comes in, all that kind of stuff, no matter what it is, there's a challenge there. Every now and then I still look back and I'm like, what would I personally do different as a dad? And then my wife and I will say things, Laura and I will, like, what would we do different? What could we do different? Just, having those thoughts. But what does it mean to be a dad? One, it means being present, for one. Like when Elijah was being born, I thought to myself, aside from procreation and biology, I'm physically here for his birth. If I were not a responsible individual and we hadn't wanted to have a child or whatever, and I wasn't there, whether I was driving a truck or running around, doing irresponsible things, if I wasn't there, I wouldn't be an actual dad. So if the first thing it means is being present, but the level of presence that is required when special needs comes into the equation is even higher. And those that, know me and maybe follow me on social media or know me personally will think that, he's one of those guys that's just always present. And maybe I'm hard on myself, but sometimes I think I'm not as present as I could be, and it's a work in progress too. So that's the first thing that comes to mind to me.
Yeah, well, and listen, and you and I have had the conversation. When Jordan was diagnosed, and it, she was about 18 months old, and first of all, the doctor threw out some term I had never even heard of it, and there's microcephaly, and I'm like, now, of course, I'm looking, well, you can break it down. Micro, small, cephaly, head, something to do with. So that really is just sort of a broad description of developmental delays. And I had no idea what that meant. And she threw out a bunch of other terms and no idea what any of that meant. And, we went online and started to research, and then we found that there were support groups, a lot of people. And the more that we got into it, I recognized for myself, to your point, this is what it means to be present. Like I was exactly like you. Took me a little bit longer. I think it's the hair. It takes a while for stuff to get in this noggin. But like, I don't think that, I thought I was present. This was my first child. And, we have tons of pictures and video, but I don't think that I was really fully present until diagnosis. And then, you don't know the light until you know darkness kind of thing. I didn't really know that I wasn't being fully present. And I think that, to your point, right? Dads, easy for dads to be like, oh, I'm just going to go. We've had guests on our show. Well, I'm just going to go focus on work. I'm going to go bring home the bacon so the family always, can be provided for, but that's not the same as being fully present, right?
No, it is not. And we, it's just something there's something said, there's something to being conscious, to having your level of consciousness always high. Think about what you think about, step outside yourself and, and take a look. And that's one of the gifts, I guess, of being a parent to a child, with special needs. And then there's always the balance between giving them fish versus teaching them to fish.
Right.
And, for instance, in Elijah's class, he has it's independent living skills. And so one of the classes will be involve preparing a meal. And it's usually something that's, microwavable, and you can get into whether or not, that's what you want them to eat or not. But the main thing is the idea of him getting into the habit of preparing his own stuff, including increasing his level of independence. And he's not crazy about it. And when we have to do that, I find myself not as patient as I should be. And I think I realized today for the first time that the level of impatience might be based on his lack of willingness to jump in and participate and do it. There's certain things where he wants to really get his hands messy and get involved. And there's some things he just doesn't. But, that's again where the patience comes in to play also. And questions are important, and then how they're asked, because I've caught myself, especially lately, at times going, my gosh, why is that an issue? As opposed to, why is that an issue? Is he is he hungry and not able to express it? Because the other thing with him is that he's verbal, but there's certain things that he's not able to clearly express. He can tell you when he's hurt, when he's in pain, or something like that. But depending on how intricate it is, he might have a challenge with it, and he may ask for a specific food that he's craving, but he's not one to say, I'm hungry. He may, if you ask him. So then that gets me to thinking, when I've heard before that those that are not that are nonverbal, especially with autism, like the words are just like almost at the mouth, like just banging, trying to get out. You just can't necessarily get them out. So in a case like that, where he can verbalize some things but not others, I was wondering, like, what is it that's missing to kind of pull it out, And I don't have to warn you, Brian, but our listeners probably need to be warned that, we've got a structure here today, somewhat loose, but I'm going to probably be all over the place as I was just now with that topic. So.
That's all right. That's all right, because it's, again, these conversations are this is how it all started, right? Yeah. It's a conversation, and it gets people thinking. Communication is such a huge thing too. I remember, so I'll share a really quick funny story about Jordan. And Jordan got into an early intervention program. By the way, Joe's on this. She's, for those of you who are live, she puts comments. She usually watches us, and she doesn't mind me having conversations about her. She actually sometimes will participate, which is great. She's such a great spirit. She was an early intervention at UCLA, and at the early intervention program, they acknowledged that some of our children are nonverbal and some of our children are communicative. And I learned so much. The reason why children go through this period called the terrible twos is the terrible twos is a result of frustration, of inability to clearly communicate. Children can understand words and they can understand concepts, and they understand how it all works at 2 years old, but they just don't know how to communicate. And so they get frustrated and they throw tantrums because that last connection hasn't happened. And so in the early intervention program, acknowledging that, first of all, children, there are really only about 7 different ways that people learn anyways, but that children can communicate. Once they learn how to communicate in some form, some manner, it eases their ability to take on verbal context. So they teach sign language, they teach, communicating by visual cues and that type of thing. So Jordan learned sign language when she was really young. And I laugh about it because I have a friend whose sister was deaf, and so he had known sign language his entire life. So this is an adult friend of mine,
Right.
and he would communicate with Jordan as when she was a baby. Things like more, I'm hungry, please, dad, mom, all of those kinds of things. Of course, I'm doing it as if I know how to, like, this is dad, right? Thank you. Anyways, but Jordan learned animals, and animals. It was I'm gonna screw it up, right? It was like cow, duck. Now I'm told it's cow, duck, pig. I don't know, something like that, right? And so what happened was she used to love cow, duck, pig. There she is. She puts in the text, cow, duck, pig. She used to always love cow, duck, pig. And so in communication, she would say things like, more cheese, please, cow, duck, pig. And so she would end every sentence with, again,
Cow,
I'm screwing it up, cow, duck, pig. And and it was so adorable and so endearing, but it started to ease the communication. She became much more verbal after. Not that she wasn't really verbal, but she became much more verbal because the ease of communication happened. So sometimes when those who have learned in a traditional manner, it's easy for us. But those who deal with special needs issues, those who don't my older brother didn't didn't really talk in clear sentences till he was like 4 years old, and he's a genius. So it's just that people learn how to communicate differently at different stages. And so if you know that there are alternative paths to go, then you can try alternative ways of having some communication. And so sometimes you go, gosh, I wonder why that's not happening. Well, it's usually because there's a lack of ability to communicate, and not ability, but lack of there's a communication component that's missing. And that, so you just really want to try to find what that piece is. And again, this is me being present. Like, I had no idea about any of this stuff until we had to, right? From a survival perspective. But I will go and say, one other thing that you mentioned earlier in the comment, if that's okay, so Jordan who's now 25, diagnosed when she was 18. Jordan has a younger sister from my marriage, Gabby, who's 21. I definitely want to talk about Gabby at some point today. I'm sorry?
Months.
She was 18 months. Yeah. 18 months.
Yeah.
Jordan was diagnosed at 18 months. Yeah.
Right.
Now 25.
Right.
Gabby is now 21 and about to graduate from University of Vermont. Totally neurotypical. No issues, no challenges growing up education wise.
Right.
But that was it. We had difficulties in that relationship, and Jordan's mom and I are no longer married. And so we're one of those statistics. It was a challenge. It's a challenge because so many things come out of, these conversations with our spouses. Sean, it always inspires me and simultaneously kills me when we sign off on the show and you always thank the women in your life. You always thank your wife, Laura, and your mother, who were so impactful in your life. And I don't, and it's not that I don't by omission, because both Jordan's mother and my second wife were incredibly instrumental in supporting Jordan and supporting the efforts we had as for special needs children. But things come up in relationships where priorities, we try to sort out, and men especially, right? We try to sort these things out, the things that we think are important and that we think need focus and we think need our attention. And some relationships can survive those, there's sort of these meandering, hoping to grasp onto some sort of foundation or grasping for some place to land. And some relationships don't. I have it's not a fact that I'm proud of, and never thought I'd be in the position I'm I'm twice divorced. Nothing to do with my children, but me as a man and as a as a husband and as a father. Our relationships didn't survive because of so many different priorities. I'll just say this, and I don't mean to ramble here, but
That's okay.
the blessing in all of it is and by the way, my second wife, we have a child who, by the way, is I guess is over here on this side, over this shoulder, sitting over here behind me. He's never here when we do our podcast, but he happens to be here today when dads are having conversation about vulnerability. Awesome. But my children are my life. That is the thing that I have come to embrace, and that is what makes me do everything that I do today. I talk to my children I'd say about all three of them every single day. They are my life, and they have helped me prioritize the things that are, that are important in the world. And as a man in the world of a businessman and an entrepreneur and a father and a coach and a friend and a husband and a cousin and a brother and a son, my role as father is so far beyond anything else that I've ever done in my life or ever will do in my life. And so,
right.
I think that that's what we as dads, have in common. And once we understand that, everything else doesn't really mean anything, right? Everything else matters. Business doesn't matter, right? Some things just don't matter, right? As long as you have a relationship with your children, that's the important stuff. I'm sorry, I rambled on this a little bit.
No, you rambled into purpose, because it's all connected and it all makes sense. And for me, I have different, I don't want to say different definitions of dad, because our family is as blended as can be. For those that don't know, we have 7 children. So I have multiple reasons to consider changing my last name to Walton, Osmond, or Jack or Jackson. But I happen to like my last name and respect all those families. But in our case, Elijah's our only biological child. He will be 15 next month. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. When my wife and I got married, she had 2 amazing daughters from her previous marriage. The youngest of who graduated last year from the master's program at USC in social work. Sorry, Brian, I know you're a Bruin, UCLA.
Right.
But and then the younger of the 2 worked in film and television. They're just both brilliant human beings. And so my role as a father was first defined by dating their mom, and
right.
Wanted to make sure that when we met them, when we agreed that when I met them, the time would be right. Wanted to make sure that I wasn't, going anywhere or anything like that, and that we had some kind of solid footing. So we did that to begin with. And then when Elijah's born, there's the biological aspect. And I remember that's one of the most glorious days of my life. Just because I also think of think of all the people.
It's catchy.
Not gonna cry. Just close. Just close. Just close. But I remember all the people that came to the room to wish us well, and I think of some of those people now, and they're all still in our lives, and just all that love, And then when we took in my sister-in-law's 4 children and became parents again in that regard,
Incredible.
And became legal guardians, that was about 11 years ago, somewhere around there, and then completed the adoption process maybe 2.5 years ago. But that was another layer and type of parenting, because you're first trying to make sure that you're not stepping on toes of the children and their biological parents, because how they came to be with us is a whole another story, number one, and it is not mine to tell. So that has really grown and developed in a whole bunch of different ways, and it's an obvious challenge. But sometimes your challenges or your gifts come wrapped in strange wrapping too, because I think Elijah would be verbal anyway, but to what extent he would be verbal, I really don't know, because his ability to communicate increased right when they came around. Now, it wasn't always for the best reasons or the best circumstances, because what he would say a lot was mine, and grab my wife and be like, mine,
Mm,
mine. Like,
yeah.
I'm not sharing her, you know, or, something of that sort where he was territorial. So there's a whole different balancing act that we've gone through and continue to go through today as a result of that. And so, you know, you and I serve the special needs community, which is, a section of humanity, overall, but there's a whole different dynamic that takes place, being a foster parent, legal guardian, and an adoptive parent. And we were all three in those situations, in addition to being biological parents. And in my case, all of those, and being a step parent, and then just really finding a way to remove that and just be, quote unquote, a parent. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of chapters to that, if you will.
Yeah, it's true. And again, for those who are watching us live, it's amazing conversations going on in the chat. So thank you all for contributing and acknowledging one another too. It's a beautiful thing. And I want to say there's something about, so there's something about the biological tie, right? And not everybody accepts it, right? Some are, and we see this a lot in the special needs community, where the divorce rate is over 50% in the general population. It's closer to 80% in the special needs community, because of the extra challenge, the extra work, and for some people feeling that they don't, they're not on the same scale from a perspective of getting attention from their partners, or whatever, a whole bunch of reasons, financial, attention, all the other things that come into play. So some biological parents are, embrace and take it on like a true warrior and champion. And we have seen and had the pleasure of having on our show and becoming friends and close friends with those who are absolutely amazing parents. And, our hats off to, all of you who have not only embraced the challenges that you have had to deal with in your own family, but then taken that on and turned it outwards and support those folks in our community. Take your experience and share them with everybody. And we love you for the work that you're doing. And it takes another special person to be a step parent. A step parent in a traditional, neurotypical family is tough enough. But being a step parent to somebody who has a child with special needs, and acknowledging that the relationship between the special needs child and their biological parent is and always will be a first position relationship. And to be willing to step into that conversation and embrace, that is a special person. And it's not an easy place to be. And it's not, when it's not your biological child, it's not an easy place to be. And then if you have a biological child, again, the difference between your special needs children and your biological children, it's not difficult. So I just, for me, I don't generally acknowledge, the mothers, in my children's lives, but they are amazing, amazing women. And, regardless of where our personal relationship ended, we still continue to be co-parents, and their commitment to our children, whether biological or step, continues to this day. And I'm so grateful for that. And for any of you who are step parents, and embrace your partner's child, just know that we acknowledge you and the work that you do, and the work that it takes to have this relationship on a regular basis. Because it's not easy when your children are neurotypical, much less with special needs. So just special love out there to all of you who take that on as well.
It's funny. That's why conversation is important, period. There's things that derive from it. That takes place, generally speaking, and it applies twice as much in my communication with you. You always bring to light something in the energy that we exchange. There's something that's brought to light that I had not even thought of. And, my ability to parent, generally speaking, always comes from my parents, but at the same time, it comes from, sorry, dog at home.
Child in the background, dog in the background.
But it also comes, it comes from, and I never thought of this before, my stepdad. Let me explain something that sort of has a big foundation for me. So one of the reasons why I had this idea, why becoming a husband, parent, and a parent was as important to me as um, being a successful entertainer, was because the example I had around me in my parents. Growing up in the Virgin Islands, my parents got married at a very young age. Um, and we had what looked like a nice, idyllic life. We had a family business, local transit, and everything that my grandfather had started, and everything. And so my parents' union was the example for me of that's what I want a marriage to look like. That's just what it
Hmm.
looks like to you. That's your example.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I ever really saw them have a solid disagreement. I never saw them fight.
Wow.
So when they split up, to me, it was like the bottom just like pulled out from underneath me. And I came out to Los Angeles. This is back in 1981. I decided to stay out here. Came to visit some cousins. And since my mom and my dad were kind of about to part ways, my mom was going to relocate to New York. She was considering that because she had lived there for a time going to college and stuff. And I became this close to being born at Brooklyn Jewish Hospital, actually. So she actually moved back to St. Thomas. She was going to have me, but she came out to Los Angeles and she met the man that would become my stepdad. And he could have ridden up on a white horse,
Hmm.
um, in a suit of armor. His name is Carl, and it just wasn't going to be good enough for me. And it's funny because consciousness at that point is, I was like 17, 18 years old, whatever. Consciousness at that point is, commensurate with my, with my age. So I'm not really stopping and thinking of why I might not get along with this person, why I might not, and so to this day, when we got married, my mother-in-law was surprised. She was like, wait a minute, you mean, she said to my wife, his dad is coming here to his ex-wife's house where she lives with her husband? Like, that was just a weird thing. But to get to that point where all this unity came about, there were some rocky times with communication, but the example I had from my stepdad and from my dad as well was I never heard either of them speak ill of the other. So when
Hmm.
I became my stepdad, it made it easy for me to do that regardless of anything that took place. So then that has something to do with how you then become a special needs dad, how you become um, a legal guardian, and then an adoptive parent, and all those different things, because there's different approaches, to becoming a parent. And so, each child needs something different too. So that's where we've had a show on the entire topic, which is how do you love equally but differently, because not everybody receives or gives communication in the same way, and there's different needs that are that exist based on temperament, age, gender, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, and thank you, Robert. I posted, for those who can't see, Robert had made a comment about stepdad simply means you're stepping into the dad role, which
Mhm.
frankly, I had never actually heard that, but of course that's exactly what it is. And I have a stepfather as well. And my biological father I had no relationship with for my first 27 years of my life. And didn't really even know anything about him or that he existed. And my stepdad was my dad. He took care of me, threw me up on his shoulder when I was a kid, and kind of really never put me down as we've gotten older and become adults, and have our own ways of living our lives. We have a lot more disagreements and a lot more differences than we did when I was younger. But the role that my stepdad played in my life was significant on so many levels, and so many, and in so many ways. He was an entrepreneur, which is now I'm an entrepreneur. And I still refer to things that I learned when I was a child from the impact that he had on my life. I tell jokes. I used to do little stand-up comedy, but my love for humor came from my stepdad. And by the way, I've met my biological father, and he's lovely, and he is a, wonderful man, and completely different than my stepdad. And again, just amazing human being. But that role of step in children's lives is incredible. Even as a guardian, even more so. That's a willingness willingness to take on children for no reason other than just for their well-being. And Sean, that's what makes you such an amazing human being. I don't know many people that would willingly step in the role of being a ward for your wife's family. And you have done that. And, seriously, but my hat is off to you. That is absolutely incredible.
Well, as always, I'm part of a team, and that's a work that's constantly in progress. If I'm blessed with, 100 more years of healthy life, I don't know that I will ever get to the point where I'm satisfied with the manner in which I do that and ease her burden, meaning my wife, Laura. It just, and it's probably, look, I don't know what the ratio is, but there's probably some bit of that's completely truth and some bit of that is me, because I'll never be like, yes, I equally do my part. Part of my affirmations includes that, because as amazing as you might think I am, she's even more. So it's a work in progress.
I know you talk about this being named Laura, and we have never seen her or heard her. I'm not exactly sure she actually exists. You thank her a lot. You talk about her. I don't really know that she exists. We haven't seen any evidence of her. So
she'll be on her own, one day eventually. You look.
I know one day she's going to do it.
Anybody looks on my social media, you pick and choose, depending on where you look, you'll see her. She's not as out there as me. I'm the mouth.
She's like, you guys go do it. I think she calls us, you dorks go do that. I'm not doing that. Before we jump off this subject of step parents, I love this. And Joe, I'm going to share this with you if you guys okay. So Joe, you guys, I love my daughter, Jordan. My daughter, Jordan, is now 25 years old, and she's married, and she lives in upstate New York. And, she acknowledges and embraces some of the difficulties that she has, and, that she has struggled with over her life. And so, but she is a loving being. And she has a stepmom who had a tremendous amount of influence on her life as well. And now, as a married woman, Jordan is also become a stepmom. So, step parents in our lives. It's sort of what happens in the world today, right? The modern world today, we have a lot of step parents. And again, hats off to everybody, including our own children who become step parents as well. There's so much stuff that we can talk about. And again, I'm so grateful for everybody who is on. Can I switch? I want to share something, Sean, if we can
go right ahead. Mm-hmm.
So my daughter, Gabby, I just going to share this. Oh gosh, I don't know if I can. You know what happens? So here's what happens, right? We get older. And I don't know. So guys, listen, this is for the men. So women, you're going to be like, yeah, we get it. But I don't know what happens to us. At some point, we have shields come down. I cry at everything. I know you and I talk about this, and I don't know why. I cry at everything. I cry at stupid commercials. I cry at TV shows that are dumb. I cry at just. Oh, I was on a conference call today, and I quoted a friend of mine on the conference call, and I got teary-eyed. So crazy. But anyways, so I'm going to do this without getting leaky-eyed, as we like to say. Somebody coined that term, leaky-eyed. So I got an envelope for my daughter, Gabby, who's in Vermont, to have out across the country. And Jordan is in New York, and Gabby is in Vermont. And Gabby sent me this, and it was basically just a bunch of quotes that she found, and she was like, hey, we call each other father and daughter. Hello, father. Just found these quotes and thought of you. Read and enjoy. Love you and think about you always. Miss you very much. I haven't seen Gabby since Jordan's wedding in June, although we talk every day. I have to read her thesis, which is 90 pages. So that's a committed father. But there's some great quotes in here that she shared. I want to share just a couple if I can. We can talk about these. Some are about stress. Clearly, she thinks that I have stress in my life. Some are about no matter how happy people seem, right? There may be some issue with them. We talk about this all the time. Really, it's kind of a quote on empathy and love. No matter how confident someone may look, there are times when they feel unsure and insecure. No matter how strong someone may appear, they have days when they feel like they're falling apart. Never think for a moment you're alone with your struggles. You're not a mess. You're human. Gabby at her house with her roommates and fellow students, they have talked about creating T-shirts with each of their favorite sayings, what they say regularly. And her roommates say that for Gabby, her comment is, I'm going to call my dad and cry. That's what. So that's my role in Gabby's life, is that I'm her safe place to come and have her breakdown. But I wanted to share one thing, because I think that this was, I've already shared. I'm sorry, Sean, I've totally taken over the show here. I did want to share this quote because I thought that this quote was amazing. Because I think we've had this conversation before about some of the challenges that we as parents of special needs children face is around grief and loss, right? Mm-hmm. And loss of, the lives that we had envisioned for our children when they're, when your spouse is pregnant, the lives that you envision when the child is born, the lives that you've envisioned for them that, is forever altered when they're diagnosed, with a special, with some special issues. I think, anxiety and there are a lot of emotions, I think, that come natural to parents of special needs children. I don't think that we talk enough about grief as being a prevalent emotion, and I think it is. I think it's the most, it's in different forms, right? It just comes up in different ways. This quote I found was so meaningful. I want to share this. This is from Jamie Anderson, who I need to look up because I found this to be so brilliant. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers up in the corner of your eyes. The lump in your throat and that hollow part in your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. Which I find that to be such a powerful comment.
That's everything. Grief is love with no place to go.
Right?
Yeah.
I think as parents, and by the way, parents and people who divorce and people who've lost a loved one just by death or disability or what just separation, right? I think the overwhelmed aspect of it is just, this is love with no place to go.
Yeah. It can't be. The only way it can be, the closest it can come to reciprocation is a memory, and it's funny because when you lose a loved one and you're grieving that which actually existed, you can sit back and wonder, I wonder if my grandparent is someplace where they're thinking about me. I wonder if they can see me. I wonder if they're proud of me and they see the things that I'm doing. Yeah. When you think about grieving the loss of a loved one that didn't come to be, it's like you can't wonder about that. That's different because the boy that I thought we would have doesn't exactly exist. But then by the same token, you're like, if you could change anything, what would you change? Now, to the person on the outside, the first thing they think was, oh, you would want to make sure that, his autism just went away. And I can't say that that's altogether true. But Laura and I have talked about this. It was like, if that happened, what would we lose too, though?
Right.
What would you lose? Now, I do think of things where he could just, as opposed to saying things maybe in broken sentences or words, I imagine him being able to say, which he has on occasion, just like I don't know, the other day he was doing something, somebody asked him, he's like, I'm going to the bedroom. It was just like, I'm going to the bedroom. Like, why are you even asking me that? And I just spilled over myself because he's like that. And I'm like, I'm going to the bedroom. And I'm going
to try that.
Yeah, so you
To
want
nobody
like
in particular.
yeah, so you want like more of that, you know, and he speaks of himself in the third person. And I don't know how much of that I completely want gone as long as he's understood. You know, right now he's going through this thing where he comes to Laura and he tells her he'll speak of himself in the third person. Elijah wants so and so. Elijah will do such and such. He goes black black suit for Elijah, black suit, blue tie, black dress shoes. And Laura's like, what do you need a suit for? He's like, black suit. And he gets the iPad and black smart suit. There's some European site that has a suit that's like
All right.
$1 and we never heard of him. Like, okay, well, let's find something similar. We don't know what it is. And he's like every day honest, like Elijah's black suit, blue tie with black dress shoes, you know? And then when it's ordered, he's like telling you the date that it's gonna show up and who's delivering it and everything. We're like, what do you need the tie for? And I want the suit. And at one point he said, because there's a wedding in Winnetka, California. And Laura's like, who's getting married? You? And he's like, yes. And we're like, about his response, you know? But then he kept saying, the office, black suit at the office. And we're like, and I kind of knew where he was going. I'm like, and Laura's like, what office? Your office? You going to an office? He goes, black suit. Daddy's office, black suit, Glendale at the office, Glendale, California. Whoosh.
Well, love that.
Yeah, and he's just, you know, we work in an environment where children are welcome, and we training in financial services and everything. It's a big emotional event and very uplifting.
Yeah.
He's been a part of that, and I guess he misses it more than I realized. So.
Yeah.
That's why that's the other thing about being a dad is that just a parent is like what you do is like they watch, they see.
Yeah.
And you're very conscious of I do this and they're paying attention. And there's things you do that you might think, yeah, they're paying attention, but what difference does any of it make? And you don't find out till somewhere down the line how much of an impact that might make, you know?
Yeah.
So, anyway, now that since you've rambled, I guess I figured I would ramble too.
It's the ramble show. It's the show of ramble.
Yeah. There you
No,
go.
I think it's great. I can't wait for us to spend more time with Elijah on camera. I know we always try to get him to join us, and it just timing hasn't worked out. But I think he's an amazing being.
He will eventually. He will. Yeah.
And by the way, I miss actually being in the office too. I'm a big hugger. Boy, that's probably a surprise for people. I love to hug people. I love hugging. And Elijah, man, he's just right in your face and coming in for a hug. So,
but you know what? He's also a good gauge too, because he doesn't go, oh, I don't like so and so. But if he meets someone and right away he wants a hug from a tactile standpoint, then facial hair makes a difference too. So he's like,
yeah.
And to be honest, I've been wearing this goatee for about a year and a half. I've never worn it that long before. He's the reason why I still have it, because every time I talk about going back to being clean, as I usually am, he's like, no, Daddy will not shave mustache and beard. No, it's like, he'll say it like some super villain or something like that. No, Daddy is not shaving. No,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I will have a suit and you will not shave. I think we know who's setting the rules around Francis' household. It's
pretty much. He's never seen the King and I. At least I don't think so, because he finds things on YouTube and you don't know where it comes from. But it reminds me of Yul Brynner and the King and I. He's like, no, it's not the King and I. I'm thinking of the 10 Commandments. But Yul Brynner is Ramsey's like, so it is written, so shall be done.
Right. I'm going to the bedroom.
Yeah, that's exactly. This is like, where are you going? I'm going to the bedroom. Almost like, I'm going to the bedroom, idiot. And then when you laugh, he's like, what's so funny?
Right.
He has no idea.
It's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. It is.
Well, I wanted to say, without saying anything, because we can't really say anything, Sean and I have had an interesting experience the last couple of days.
Yeah,
we're not going to talk about it specifically. We're not going to talk about it specifically because we can't contractually. But we've had some awesome exposure, and it may lead to something, kind of fun and horribly embarrassing for at least for me. I don't think it's going to be as embarrassing for Sean, but I'm just telling you, I've had to go on a bit of a crash diet just in case something happens. But again, I know people are like, "What are you talking about, dude?" I can't, and I'm honestly, I can't say that, but we will talk about it. We will talk about it when we can. I think that what I was going to say was, it was interesting because you have to answer a bunch of questions, like kind of an interview conversation, right? Interview.
Yeah.
You went through it, right? You went through the questionnaire today. Did you go through the questionnaire?
Yes.
You're not done with it yet.
I have to wrap it up today. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, they're really not happy that you're taking so long. No, I'm just teasing you. But the bottom line is, they're asking us a bunch of questions, which is, tell us something about Sean. So they talk a lot about the Just Two Dads platform and the two of us, and tell us about your partner, and tell us about what's the good stuff, what's some good things about your partner, and what's the not so good things about your partner. That was a much harder thing for me to find. The good things. I found a whole list of the things that were not good. No, I'm kidding. It was the other way around. But it gave me a chance to think about it, right? Anytime that somebody asks you a questionnaire of things where you've got to have some reflection, I think is why reflection is such an interesting and important thing that we all should be doing on a regular basis, because it gets you to think and be present. I really realize that the work that we do in our business of financial services is impactful, and it makes a huge difference in people's lives. And people are transformed when they sit with us, whether it's for a 20-minute meeting. This is kind of what we do, or a longer period of time together. People are definitely transformed, and I do love that about our business, because when can you work in a business and transform people's lives? But the thing about our business is that what it's done is it's created a platform for us to have this conversation and have these regular conversations, and the partnerships in business and in life. And really, it's beyond friendships, because there's people that you work with, that you're friends with. Everybody thinks about the people that they had their first jobs with, and people they work with, and how close they are with their coworkers. And then there's some coworkers who are like, if I never see that guy again, it'll be too soon. But we don't always get to choose our coworkers. But in our business, we get to choose our business partners. And it's more than just friendships. It really is it's a family relationship and again, I've seen this as we've talked to many families in the special needs community. There are people who choose to be special needs parents. There are people who don't choose it, who become parents in the special needs community out of diagnosis. And then there are people who choose it. Like those family members, I choose my partnerships and my relationships in this business, and I choose your partnership on so many levels, Sean. There are so many amazing and wonderful things about you. You give me, freedom and space to be a dork, and to be, vulnerable, and to be open, and to have straight conversations. And I tell you things that I don't tell, any other people. And I am grateful to you for, I'm at 57 years old. I'm like, establishing meaningful relationships. It wasn't as important as it was when you're young, and, forming your lifelong friendships in the early days. It always seems to be part of our identity, but we don't do that much as adults. And so just want you to know, I'm grateful to you, for how you allow me to be, and how you give me freedom to express on so many, in so many different ways. And so, there aren't anything. I always say, you always say things that are always incredibly profound. And I said, like, if I had to point out something that was like, it's like it's not a negative thing, because it was like, well, what is? I would say, well, Sean likes to be profound even when it's not called for, right? That's like the only negative thing I can say about you. There, you have a profundity even when it's not called for. Right? How wonderful is that to be in that kind of a place? But I just want, as I was ramble today. Today was a non-guest thing. I think you and I were living in a space of just general vulnerability. The pandemic has had an impact. Our getting, trying to find what normalcy looks like, dealing with things of life and just things in general. This was a good conversation to have this week, because I just think we just needed to just be just the two of us with, a bunch of people listening in on this conversation.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And so I want to thank you for the kind words and let you know that I not only feel the same, but and not to go in another direction, but for just from a spiritual standpoint, this is just being real. This isn't being religious. Sean Hall, our producer in Hawaii, mentioned earlier in the chat that you know I don't know if people stop to consider that Jesus had a father.
Yeah.
So whether one sees Jesus as a um, a um, a prophet, living being, whatever the case is, I'm still sticking with the idea of something greater than ourselves, because you mentioned what I allow you to do. I could sit here and say, well, it's because the reason why I do that, Brian, is because I see A, B, and C, and at the right time, I know it's appropriate to do so. Look, there may be that much of that is applicable, but the majority of it is just a matter of the way things fall into place. And as a result of that, that is something that I cannot, in good conscience, take credit for. And that's, as we were explaining, we were saying, as we were doing that questionnaire for that potential opportunity, we were saying, they're asking us, so what are your roles like? Usually in any relationship, in a dynamic, a friendship, marriage, or whatever the case is, one person is easily identified as maybe the leader, or whatever one person is, the other person is not, and they balance each other out. Um, that ends up being the case with Laura and I. We have strengths and weaknesses that balance each other out. What's different and unique here is that, you know, most of the things that would define your personality, a lot of them, fit my own as well. And usually when people are very similar, it's like, they're too much alike, so there's a portion of that can't be explained. So the level of gratitude is even deeper, as a result of that. And, it's just a great thing to be able to have these conversations. And as we mentioned, these are things that people, that we think need to hear. So those that are tuning in live now, we appreciate the comments and the attendance. But for those of you that end up listening on the other platforms, on our YouTube channel, and the other platforms where podcasts are found, we're on virtually all of them at this point, too many to mention. Feel free to comment and do the same thing. And if there's things that you want to hear about, let us know. And as we get ready to kind of close out, Brian, you're probably not prepared for this, so it might throw you off. But
Perfect.
I'm gonna have this be no different than would be the case if we had a guest, especially since you talked about, it's your fault, because when you talked about the importance of reflection, that's what made it pop into my head. So when we talk about reflection, we talk about growth. That question we always ask, which is, tell us
Yeah.
one thing that, one belief that you held dear for the majority of your life. One way of thinking that you now think the opposite about.
Well, it's funny because when you ask this question, I'm always thinking, how would I answer that? And I've thought about it a bunch of different ways. That question drives me crazy because it requires really deep down thinking, pulling stuff out. And I'll honestly say the easy answer, and for the sake of it, the easy answer is that I thought that, as you get older, you become more wise, and your experience leads to knowledge. And you don't have to learn anything new. You've seen it all, you've experienced it all, and you're just at a place of, altitude. And what I've come to realize is that our knowledge increases the more we're open to the idea that we don't know it all, and that we don't have all of the answers. And the more that we know that we are still in the learning and evolving process. And I know that there's elements of scripture that talk about this too. And I'm not a religious person, but I know that this is the thing. It's the more that you can be learning, I think we'll learn until the end. And the more that we're open to that, that's where our knowledge comes from. That's a completely new thought for me over the last 6 years. That's
Great.
I thought I had to know it all. And now I know that the less I know, the more educated I'm becoming.
Well, you mentioned my ability to be like profound. I'm going to say something here that is as profound as it is silly, but as true as it is both. I was talking to a friend of mine, dear friend, like brother, in the Virgin Islands. The other day we were talking on the phone. He was telling me how short his list of friends are, and it's like me and maybe like one other person, relative of his. And I think that outside of my brother, he is the only other person that kind of fits that role, and and is you have that level of closeness and trust with. And for me to be able to say at this stage of life to have that, and then share that with you as well, that's not common. And so the thing that I'm going to say that is as profound as whatever, and it's funny because you've heard it in a commercial and it sounds really silly and you crack up about it, but the idea of stay thirsty, my friends, that's real. That's not just some silly thing, because you talk about he who thinks that he knows everything really ends up just finding out that he knows nothing. Matter of fact, you can get to nothing. The more you think you know everything, the faster you'll get to realizing that you know nothing.
Right.
The man who lives a million years still won't know everything in the computer age, and then that's the factual part. But then the other part is just, who wants to walk around acting like you know everything? That's a torturous life. There's nothing new to learn. And so that goes back to another conversation we had days ago. We were talking about successful people are usually future oriented. Most people are nostalgic to a fault, where you're like, are the best days behind me,
Right.
But
Right.
anyway, with that said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and indulging us in our ramble, because I think we remained on the topic, but then drifted, to the suburbs of the city of dads as well. Thank our listeners in the U.S. Virgin Islands and WSDX, and my family in the Virgin Islands, my friends, Robert Moorhead, Noreen, Susanna, our producer in Hawaii, Sean Hall. And as always, remember that somebody needs to know that you care. They need to know that they matter. They need to know that they're seen. They need to know that they are heard. And there aren't necessarily special needs. Everybody needs the same thing. Those with a diagnosis just need a little more of the same thing that everybody needs. And then I need to thank the women in my life, for whom without them, I couldn't even begin to attempt to be who I am trying to grow into. And that is my mom, Jan, and my wife, Laura.
I'm just going to say one last thing, and then we're going to sign off. Again, since you brought it up, I have for me, the women in my life, which include my adult daughters, who I love dearly, Joe, who's often on this call, and Gabby, and to my children's mothers, who are I'm so grateful for, and to the women in my life who have a very strong spiritual influence and support. I am so grateful to all of you. And Sean Francis, I am so grateful to you again, my friend. Thank you. This is all about empathy and love, everybody. The more we can share empathy and love with those around us, the better the world is going to be. So I thank you all, Robert, Noreen, Susanna, everybody who commented, Joe, I love you dearly. Sean Hall in Hawaii, thank you, my friend. We love you all. Catch us on all of our podcasts. Share it with people. We're going to start replaying some shows just for people to have access to. But go to our YouTube channel, WSTX AM Radio. Listeners in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we love you all. Thank you for being a part of this conversation and making a huge difference in our lives. So,
and one last thing. Go to the YouTube page, like, comment, and share. And we got some great shows coming up with some fantastic guests and great event that we're in this planning stages of as well. Thank you so very much.
Awesome. Have a great day, great week, everybody.